In a few moments, the French colors of Pamir will be lowered for the last time.
After 13 years of operations, fighting terrorism and establishing security as part of the international coalition, French troops have left Afghanistan. Afghan forces are now responsible for the security of their country. From the start of the French involvement in the Afghan conflict, the missions were constantly evolving.
Second section of the Anna detachment.
The military force was reorganized several times to adapt it to the conflict, right until the last day of operations. In this new part of the Journal of Defense Afghanistan Special, we'll take you to Kapisa and Surobi, the areas of responsibility of the Lafayette Task Force. We will then follow the men and women who worked for the gradual withdrawal of French soldiers while security operations were carried out to enable Afghanistan to regain its independence and the hope that had disappeared. In winter 2009, French forces had been in Afghanistan for nearly 9 years. They operated within the U.S. Enduring Freedom Operation and as part of the International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, under NATO command.
From the moment that we took responsibility for the whole of the Kabul region, we were forced to engage the forces a little further away, a little further to the east. We therefore entered, so to speak, a much harder phase for the traditional battalion.
ISAF decided to increase its numbers. France therefore deployed 4,000 troops, the fourth largest of the contributing countries. In Kabul and its region, the soldiers were working for the success of their new mission, to transfer security responsibility to the Afghan forces.
Permanently with the ANSF participating to the operation.
At the same time, in the late 2009, a French brigade under U.S. command, the Lafayette Task Force, was created by ISAF. At its head was General Marcel Drouhard, who had been in Afghanistan for 4 months. French capabilities were centered on a single area, the Surobi district and Kapisa province, with a surface area nearly twice the size of Luxembourg.
Tomorrow's threat type, an IED, which I assess as average, immediately following departure from the FOB.
The brigade numbered nearly 3,000 soldiers, 75% of the French deployment in Afghanistan, thus concentrating the deployed resources. The Lafayette Task Force established its headquarters at the Nizrab operational base in Kapisa. General Pierre Chevancy, commander of the brigade in 2010, discusses the importance of security in this region.
The Americans themselves classified this zone as the eastern shield of Kabul, as it was the buffer zone for routes from Pakistan. We therefore had a very important responsibility, and everything that we were doing in this area had an immediate impact on the security of the city of Kabul.
The Lafayette Task Force had the advantage of numerous action capabilities. A tactical battle group in Surobi, another identical battle group in Kapisa, a special forces group and a helicopter battalion located at Kabul airport.
With intelligence resources, we had drones installed in both Kapisa and Surobi. And then, of course, all the support elements, artillery, engineering. The anti-IED role was important there, and all the support functions necessary to support all the French soldiers, and also civilians who lived and operated in Kapisa and Surobi.
Apart from the security mission, the role of the men and women of the Lafayette Task Force was to convince a population that had been at war for over 70 years.
At first it was difficult to break the ice with this population of suspicious mountain peasants. We were not new invaders. The Taliban were the new invaders. We were just temporary, and we represented more of an opportunity than a constraint.
The other difficulty was to make the embryonic armed forces, a new national police force, legitimate in the eyes of the population and the local representatives. So the OMLT teams, which provided advice and instructions to the ANNA, then deployed in the Kabul area, transferred to Kapisa. Captain Jean-Baptiste witnessed a change within the Afghan forces.
The way they looked at us started to change. Their enthusiasm changed. Their confidence in themselves changed. They demonstrated over time a lot more initiative and understanding of the maneuver and the construction of the maneuver, which for us was much easier to read.
The soldiers of the Lafayette Task Force continued the security operations to deal with the insurgents. The objective was to achieve a maximum reduction in the level of violence, to facilitate actions in the area of development and governance. Civil-military actions supported by a team of specialists in the fields of agriculture, education or justice were decisive. To safeguard the security and retake territory from the insurgents, fighting remained intense. France deployed its first Tiger attack helicopters and its first VBCI, armored infantry fighting vehicles.
In practical terms on the ground, whether it was in the province of Kapisa to the north or in the province of Surobi to the south, where the VBCI were engaged, they provided the two tactical battle groups with additional scope in terms of observation and destruction of insurgent targets, and clearly welcome protection against IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and against direct fire.
In 2010, 9 years after its engagement began, France took command of the medical surgical hospital installed at Kabul airport, called Kaya. The multinational structure, the first built by NATO in theater of operations, extended over more than 3,800 square meters. Its priority missions: health support and medical evacuations for Allied and Afghan forces. Able to deploy 3 simultaneous surgical teams, this was the final link in the health chain in Afghanistan.
Our health system, our medical evacuation chain from the unit doctor to the medical surgical group and then evacuation, remains something that works well, even very well. It's recognized by the other armies and reassures our colleagues on the ground, I believe, that whatever happens, we are behind them.
In the event of serious injury, the wounded French person is transported to hospital in France in less than 24 hours.
We have this opportunity for a rapid aerial evacuation procedure in the form of Morphe, with the huge C-135FR based in Istres, which can be converted into a module for the evacuation of many wounded, or we use Falcons to recover 1 or 2 heavy casualties and take them back to France in 6 to 7 hours.
The hospital's other mission is to provide medical aid to the population. Until 2014, 2,000 French soldiers, including 600 doctors, and 500 Allied soldiers took turns running the hospital. Less than 2 hours flight from Kabul airport, Kandahar, since 2007 the Air Force Fighter Detachment has joined the American base.
When we were engaged in the southern Afghan theater, we were much better able, within 10 to 15 minutes of takeoff, to offer serious air support to disengage a force. I would even say to reverse the balance of power on the ground. The Afghan situation was completely new for the type of airmen that we actually were. First, because we were at the heart of the theater, and in terms of emotions, in terms of the morale of the troops, we were not used to this. That counts. The second thing is that we felt extremely supportive and in full and direct contact with the enemy, as well as with the foot soldiers who bore the burden of defending and supporting.
In 2010, the Lisbon Summit marked a turning point in the Afghan conflict. NATO announced the gradual withdrawal of troops who would cede, in phase, responsibility for security tasks to the Afghan forces. A timetable was set. The Afghan conflict was to end in 2014 for the French forces. Until then, French troops would face a new challenge: to enable logistical convoys to reach the Kabul airport transit area completely safely. On arrival at its destination, the logistics battalion checked and disarmed the armored equipment. Aeronautical parts and medical equipment, so-called sensitive equipment, was returned to France by air, which is safer and faster. In 2013, the logistics disengagement was completed. 3 years after its creation, the Lafayette Task Force was dissolved. French forces had successfully completed the missions entrusted to them. On December 31, 2014, the last French troops left Afghanistan.
There is still an Afghan government today. There is a national army, a police force, etc. So we still have hope for the future. We hope to safeguard everything we have achieved for this country.
The page has been turned, but the history of Franco-Afghan relations, now 2 centuries old, continues. A symbol of this particular link was the signing in 2012 of the Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation between the two countries.